Oh, delicious. This is what we're cooking today. 안녕하세요 from Korea. Today we're cooking Galbi-jjim. Galbi-jjim is braised pork or beef with assorted vegetables. It takes about an hour and a half cooking it on a low heat until you're left with meat that is soft and not too chewy. If you're interested in learning more about cooking Korean food, then hit the subscribe button. Every week I post myself cooking a new Korean dish, as well as teaching a little bit more about what it's like to live over here in Korea. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Let's start with the meat. I'm using beef, and it's Galbi Sauce. That's essentially the short rib meat. Normally, when you're cooking this traditional way, you usually buy it with the bone in. This is just the same, it just has the bone out. Now remember, I'm always saying we need to save money these days. Food is expensive in the supermarkets, so buy what's cheap and buy what's on sale, or just what's available. For me, I went to the supermarket and I picked this up for cheap. So that's what I'm using today. Feel free to use what you can get your hands on. Our first step is to soak the meat for about 30 minutes. We want to soak it in cold water, and that's going to actually remove the blood from it. This is important. Later when you're cooking it, you'll find you get sort of these hardened bits of blood floating to the top of the dish if you don't do this. So definitely take that extra time and throw it in some cold water. This will also give you time to prepare your other ingredients while you're waiting for this to finish soaking. And speaking of other ingredients, let's make the sauce. Follow along with the directions on the screen, get a bowl and prepare it in advance. Then you can just pour it on the meat when it's ready. When we're making this sauce, there's two important things you want to pay attention to: how much soy sauce you're using and how much water. The more water you add, essentially the less salty and less flavorful it will be. And then of course if you have more soy sauce, it could be a bit salty. So keep an eye on that, taste it as you go, as you're cooking it down, and then play it by ear. Feel free to add a little bit more water. It doesn't matter if it gets a little runny towards the later stages. It'll still taste delicious, so don't worry. Now we prepare our vegetables since we've got a bit of time. And the only strange thing here is what I'm doing now, where I'm peeling it. You're just removing the edges, which means as these vegetables boil down, those little pieces won't fall off into the soup and sort of change the consistency from it. That does become important later as they get softer. Now the size you need to pay attention to a little bit. You want bigger chunks for most of these, simply because they're going to cook down. They're going to be cooking for longer than you might if you're doing a stir fry. So I'm going for fairly big chunks. And now our meat is ready. Some of that blood is seeped out. You can see the color of the water. The best thing to do is actually do this overnight, but not everyone has the time for that, and I understand that. Also, a quick way to fix it is to just boil it for 10 minutes. That'll further remove some of the blood during the boiling process, the heating up process. Then simply run it under some cold water and give it a quick wash. You want to remove these little bone fragments that can sometimes be there from the cutting process, and that's especially important when it has bones in it. Then pour over that perfect, delicious sauce that we made earlier. If it is not completely covering, add some water. Increase the water level a bit because you're going to be cooking this down for an hour. So there you can see I've got it after 1 hour. The meat is still soft, but it can still cook for a little longer. And a lot of that water has disappeared, leaving just the sauce. So I'm going to add more water because we still have a lot of cooking to go. The meat has further reduced, and now we add the first vegetable, which is the radish. The radish takes the longest to cook, so we add that first. We want it to be soft, no crunchy radishes in Galbi-jjim, please. The meat now is very tender, but we've still got more to go. Add the carrot. If you've ever had carrot, you know it can take a while to cook, especially ones that are that size. I didn't cut it thin because I know it's going to be cooking for longer. Now my mushrooms. These actually I had prepared earlier because they were leftovers from something else I cooked. Look at that, you can see it looks delicious. but it's not quite falling apart yet, so I've got to cook it for longer. The water level now is right down. I won't add any more water to this because that would just mean it'll be too runny. I'm adding the last vegetables except for the paprika or bell pepper. And now that water is going to go on high and it's returning to almost like a juice or like a syrup. It's a little thicker than just runny water. At which point I add that paprika in and give it a quick stir, and it's almost ready. Now the meat's perfect. It's practically falling off the bone there, and it's time to plate. It looks delicious. I can't wait to eat this. Throw the sauce, a little bit of rice. Delicious. And I cannot wait to eat this at this point. So I poured myself a glass of wine. I hurried through pictures. You gotta take pictures when you do this YouTube stuff. And then I ate that whole plate very quickly. So thank you for sticking around and watching. Obviously consider subscribing and give me the like there. We are always keen to post more of these wonderful Korean dishes. So until next time, 안녕히 계세요.